forbidden and banned, the bane of bureaucrats, exposing mainstream media's weapons of mass distraction.
Flying under the radar and dropping truth bombs on tyranny.
It's Liberty Now. All right, and hello, fellow Liberty lovers. This is John Verd, trainer, piper, Navy diver, and fellow Liberty lover. Welcome to Liberty Now, the podcast for discerning minds and common sense, where we can all think for ourselves. Thank you very much. My guest today is Kirk Beck, and I'm really interested to talk to him about a subject we've touched upon, not directly, but through things like common law before. So I'm excited to get his take and how he got involved in all this. Kirk, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. So a little bit about your background. So you're in the US and I'm in New Zealand, which is part of why we've had some difficulty coordinating across massive amount of time zones. But where did you grow up?
Originally from South Dakota.
Oh, okay.
Went to Colorado, or went to South Dakota School of Mines, Technology. Moved to Colorado for about 12 years and been in California for about 37 years.
Okay. How you liking California?
I love the weather today.
Nice. Yeah.
As we say out here, California is great because they haven't learned how to tax the weather yet.
That's about the only thing, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah. There's been a bit of an exodus out of there. We used to complain in Seattle that all the Californians are moving up there, changing the laws to their liking, and it's no joke. Seattle is a lot like San Francisco, and I don't necessarily mean in a good way these days, but yeah, I'm sure there's still some really good pockets of good folks like you all over California.
Oh, geographically, we dominate the state.
Yeah.
We have
So-
about 45 sheriffs that are really squared away.
Awesome. That is encouraging to hear. So you have gotten really involved in affidavits. Now it's a word we hear bandied around occasionally, and I think a lot of people may be vaguely familiar with it as a kind of a legal term. But can you give us a clear, easy definition just for lay people?
An affidavit is a statement of facts that is then taken to a court official called the notary.
Mhm.
And the notary verifies the person's identity, and then the person swears that the information contained in the affidavit is true. Now, most people know that. What they don't know is that according to common law, if you're presented with an affidavit, you should have a appropriate amount of time to respond, but you must respond. Otherwise, you basically have given over to the opposition, and that can be used against you in a
Right.
court of law.
And this is not something that is restricted to the domain of common law or the people who want to, opt out of, I guess, what is it, maritime law, which a lot of us don't realize we're sort of by default locked into. We can go into that conversation, but do you have a law background, Kirk?
I went to law school for a semester, and
Okay.
I recognize that I'm not getting what I really wanted. I don't want to study sort of certain court cases. I wanted to understand the basic principles of common law. So
Okay.
I've done most of that studying on my own and with other people.
Okay. So yeah, maybe you could tell us and the audience why would this be of interest to anybody who's not a lawyer?
Be happy to. But before I do that, I just want to mention that to those listeners that are at the end, I'm going to make a presentation of a free gift to them for their being on this program. So
Excellent.
back to the question. I've been a very curious person for a long time. I see things that don't add up. I see things that are conflict of interest. It all started for me just traffic case and recognizing I'm paying this money to whom? I haven't hurt anybody.
Right.
And now $240 coming out of my pocket because I didn't stop at the stop sign appropriately. And then I
Right.
had an opportunity to ride a couple of times with police officers, and I saw how they had total discretion. They could give tickets to some people and give no tickets to other people. Why didn't you give her a ticket? Well, I gave her one last week. I don't want to give her another one.
Wow.
That doesn't sound like you went to school for 6 months, so now you get to be judge and jury out on the street.
Right.
Doesn't make sense.
It seems very arbitrary to me. I think to a lot of us who sort of have a sense of this, but you like witnessed it firsthand.
Yes. Well, one of the most poignant statements in the Declaration of Independence by Jefferson was when he said, he, speaking of the king, has combined with others, speaking of Parliament and the governors, colonial governors, to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to acts of pretended legislation. What a marvelous sentence. It's not even a complete sentence because it ends with a colon, and then he starts listing all the things that the British are doing to the colonists.
Right.
But mark certain things. Subjected us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. Well, it's not the United States Constitution. That came 11 years later. So he's talking about the common law that guided the colonists.
Right.
Common law had become part of England, established history, and the colonists were rebelling because they're saying, hey, we're being treated as second-class citizens. Now, the interesting thing to me, at my perspective, is that that's exactly what's happening in the United States today. We're being
Yeah.
subjected to a jurisdiction foreign to our United States Constitution. It's
Yeah. I do feel like we have pushed the boundaries or tortured the Constitution so badly that we are at sort of a 1776 moment in time where the powers that be aren't a tangible king that we can point a finger at. I mean, that you might say if you disagree with the president in the executive or the executive branch, but it's much deeper than that. There's a whole deep state and a cabal of commercial interests that are acting as king and juror over our lives. But I think a lot of Americans and a lot of people around the world, it goes beyond America, are getting to that boiling point where they're pretty fed up, which is why I think we're interested in this kind of thing. And the common law is I shouldn't call it a workaround, but maybe a deeper understanding of the legal obligations we're truly under, or I guess it helps us to see our actual sovereignty under a higher authority or under a bigger law. Would you agree?
well, when I hear people getting upset, making statements like our government's totally corrupt, our courts are corrupt, and my experience has been, well, believe it or not, some of these people are just plain ignorant.
Oh,
They've
I
never
believe
been
there's,
educated.
yes, I believe that's also true. Yeah.
Well, we had a candidate for a judgeship come to a church, and I asked her later after most people were gone. I didn't want to embarrass her. I said, "Ma'am, what is the Seventh Amendment?"
Yeah.
And she, oh my gosh, very embarrassing, but I don't know. I said, well, ma'am, that's the amendment that gives us a right to have a jury trial in your court.
Yeah.
She was really red with shame. I mean, I said it goes on beyond that. It talks about how, and no fact shall be adjudicated but by the rules of common law. Now, what are these rules of common law? Well, one of them is if I send you an affidavit and it's notarized and it's based upon valid constitutional law, proper evidence, facts, and truth, and you don't rebut it in 30 days, then it can be used against you in any court in America. Now, when Americans will pull up their pants and start doing that, we'll stop talking about the guns. We don't need guns. In the First Amendment, there's an enforcement agent, and that's the petition for redress, or as I like to say, petition for remedy of grievances.
Right.
They send us paper, we send them paper that's notarized. Ours overrules theirs. They can only overrule ours by coming back with a rebuttable affidavit, one that rebuts mine, and they never do. My mentors are Jack and Margie Flynn. They've been doing this for 6 decades, not 6 years, 6 decades.
Wow.
They have over 10,000 victories. When I first heard that, 10,000 victories, how in the world do you have 10,000 victories? Well, I got 5 right now.
Wow.
And that's in the last 5 years. I've used this and I've got 5, 2 in court and 3 out of court. It works at all. If I can, and that's why I'm on these podcasts across the country. Is my goodness, if we just get 300 people in my county doing what I'm doing, they'll be scurrying into their little holes because they can't stand it when their name's on the affidavit. Normally, you send a letter, an irate letter, to an agency that's doing something bad to you.
Right.
We don't do that. We send a very tactful, well-conceived affidavit to the guilty party, the guy at the top. If I have a problem with the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, I don't send it to the DMV. I find out the guy's name at the top, and that's who it goes to.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a really good point, and in a sort of deeper philosophical discussion, I've spoken with friends about the idea that corporatism removes the individual from any personal liability. And the very word corporate is like a body, and it acts and behaves as an individual, but without any of the consequences. And I think that's a really good point, is pegging, like an actual name who is on paper and in fact responsible for the actions against other individuals.
Well, I'm not in a position at this point to disagree or agree with what you just said, but I do know that it's a jurisdictional question.
Right.
And if somebody is under statutory jurisdiction, then I'm limited as to how I can deal with them. But if we can pull them into common law jurisdiction, and they're the top of a corporation and they're doing something that is hurting me, or maybe not hurting just me, but hurting other people, because under common law, we have what they call standing. I had a police officer once, I said to him, what would you do if you're walking down the street and 2 people across the street are mugging a woman? And he said, well, based upon what I know about the law, I just keep walking. Oh,
Wow.
really? Let me change it slightly. The woman being mugged across the street is your mother.
Right.
Now what are you going to do? Because that's common law.
Right.
Common law is that if they come against anybody, I have a responsibility, not just a moral obligation, but a responsibility to be with them and to help them, to
Right.
acknowledge them.
And so this gets into a conversation about the distinction between jurisdictions, and we're talking about common law, and that would be opposed to maritime law. Is that right? That we
I go by statutory because that's the
statutory.
word they use. It
Right.
could be
Okay.
maritime. I know most of the time it's commerce. So my question with the DMV is I'm not in commerce. The
Right.
traffic code is for people who are moving people around, Uber.
Right.
But not me. I'm just traveling. I'm just traveling to the grocery store.
Right.
That's all I'm doing.
And I don't want to get too far off on a tangent. We can come back to this point, but uh, one of the things that comes up, I've had these conversations with other like-minded people, and they talk about, we need to exercise our rights under common law, which is like a higher authority, or the true law. However, it takes a lot of education and understanding to exercise it properly and legally if you want to get anywhere in court and get the outcome that you're after. But you brought
Absolutely.
up earlier the idea of you can get rid of the guns if we exercise this common law properly. But that always brings us to uh, in the event of, say, martial law, or the UN, as they've said, they have the ultimate authority, a monopoly of power, because they have the guns. And uh, don't you think it's a good, getting into the Second Amendment? Don't you think it's a good idea that we have that sort of plan B or backup to protect our common law rights if the state or another authority broaches, our legal rights?
If we didn't have the Second Amendment, we would have been cooked a long time ago.
Agreed. And we don't, none of us, I think even the most ardent gun enthusiasts would say, we don't want to jump to that. That's the very last possible straw. But I think that was its intention, to protect us and help us to maintain our sovereignty. But in reality, if the government decides, legally or not legally, that they're going to put us under martial law, and pretend that they have the authority to confiscate all guns, does common law really hold up? How valuable is it to you when the government says, well, we're under martial law, I don't care about your legal piece of paper and your affidavit anymore?
I
Is
think that now is the time to prepare for that and not wait for it to hit us. That's why I tell people the first rule of law that you have to follow is to notify your potential enemy.
right.
So if I have a problem, I've given an affidavit to my sheriff, my police chief, and to the highway patrol, specifying in this one particular area that we might have a problem in the future. You've been notified, and therefore you understand you're responsible sheriff, you're responsible chief of police. That's why if a police officer were to stop me, the paperwork I would give them would be a affidavit made out to their boss. That's going to get their attention. They're not going to just, oh, I don't care about that. No, it's made out to your boss.
Right.
So they're very, very concerned about that. Our job is to educate our leaders now while there's time. We've got a great big window right now. But
Yeah,
is it
yeah, I
is
agree.
it
That's a good point. And I guess the power of these tools is in uh, being preemptive before things decay into barbarism, or whatever we think may or may not be coming down the track. But I do think we have a pretty good window, and this might be a good thing to take advantage of and exercise our
we've
rights
we've got an affidavit we're working
proactively.
right now regarding the attorney general.
Oh, wow.
So I'm getting people to send an affidavit, or I'm making it easier for some people. Let's at least notify him. You won't have to have an affidavit, just notify him, and let's pile it on his desk so he knows we're watching him. One of
Right.
my first victories after traffic court was going into my assemblywoman, and I asked her, what's the purpose of government according to the Declaration of Independence? They always tell you it has to do to protect the people. I said, no, after the words life, liberty, pursuit of happiness are these words, that to secure our rights, governments are instituted among men. Your job when you go to the Capitol building is to secure our rights. Please do not trample on them. 6
Right.
months later, she was sponsoring a bill that would be trampling on people's rights. We sent her an affidavit, quite a few affidavits. The next thing we know, the whole law is withdrawn. I mean, it's not a law. The statute was withdrawn. It wasn't finally signed by the governor. They dropped it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's actually really encouraging. We need to hear more of those success stories, because I think a lot of us are lacking that education, which gets into the question of, there's it, from what I've seen, there's a lot of uh, effort that needs to go into learning all the ins and outs of exercising your rights under common law. Um, how realistic is it for the average person to be able to you know start
Well,
enforcing their rights
I
under
would
common
have to
law?
say I'm a pretty average person. I, I'm no smart guy, really. I'm just a curious person. So much I've learned by simply uh, pursuing my rights. I've met people that aren't overly brilliant people, but boy, they've just got it in their heart that I'm an American. I
Yeah,
was gifted with all this liberty, and I'm not going to lose it. I'm going
yeah,
to stand up. What they simply need is a coach. Like Jack and Margie Flynn were my coach. They helped me to understand what to do. So now that's what I'm doing. And that's why I'll pause at this point to say at the end of this discussion here, our interview, I'm going to give the address where people can get a free gift from me. Well, the free gift is going to have the initial paragraph and the final paragraph of all of my affidavits.
oh,
My
awesome.
first paragraph basically says, hey, you got a responsibility to answer. Here's a couple of court cases that say you better answer. Down here at the bottom, those critically important words. Failure to rebut this affidavit means that everything in it can be used against you in a court of law. We're not threatening, we're just warning. We're just
Right.
saying it could be used against you. Now, those are really powerful parts that are going to be available to people to see later. And also, I do a podcast or do a Zoom call on Thursday evenings, and I'm probably going to be expanding the time period so people can just call in and I bring up an affidavit and we just talk about that one.
Oh, that's excellent.
Affidavits are not that difficult, especially when you got that first paragraph and that last one.
Excellent.
Jack and Margie Flynn are responsible for giving us that.
Oh, fantastic. And also it brings up the question that comes up for me personally and other patriots who may not actually be living in the United States. Is this unique to the US? Is it available to citizens living outside the US and to non-citizens in other countries?
Great question. I'll simply defer. I don't know. I got far
Very
enough
diplomatically said.
problem. I'm right here in California. My God, I'm in the stranglehold, and I don't have a
Yeah,
lot of room to go out and inspect other areas.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's maybe some. I'll dig around and see if I can find any resources to help all of us research that. And if folks listening, you want to go to the website after the show, I'll drop a couple links in the show notes there. See if we can help find that out. And if you know anything about it yourself, I would encourage you send me an email to john@libertynow.com, and I'll be happy to share that information. Otherwise, you can go to the show notes at libertynow.com for this episode with Kirk Beck. Yeah, it's really good information, Kirk. I appreciate it. Um, and I think we've answered a lot of as much as we could probably cover. Any other points, sort of with the backdrop of everything that's going on in the US right now and around the world? Um, Anything that you think we should bring up or cover?
Well, I like to say that what I'm doing with the affidavit process is a great stopgap, but it's not the answer fully.
Yeah,
But the answer fully, I believe, has been worked on for the last 15 years by an organization called Tactical Civics,
tactical.
tacticalcivics.com.
Okay, I'm gonna
And
make a note of that.
the purpose there is to establish in every county a people's grand jury. We
Okay.
have grand juries, but they're government run. So
Right.
government doesn't do a good job of supervising government. What
Yeah.
we have
Yeah.
in a long history here in the United States up until about 1930s and 40s, we had people's grand juries where the judge, the mayor, the city attorney could be subpoenaed into a meeting, an investigation by the people. Now,
Right.
today, most people don't even know, well, what's a grand jury? Well, that's for no, it's not just criminal, it can be civil as well. They used to investigate whether the lighting was appropriate in the city. And city officials had to come down and swear under oath that everything they're saying is true.
Wow.
I have seen remarkable things accomplished in this county by just a few people who have basically started getting some whistleblowers to give them the information, and then we hit them with the affidavits, and the next thing you know, my gosh, they're watching us,
Yeah.
and
It's
that's
almost like
critically important.
it sort of puts the power of subpoena and discovery into the hands of just everyday folks, not just an attorney. It seems.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
I like that. One thing that I ran across reading some of your information on your website that really caught my attention. We may not have time to go into it real deeply, but what you had said something about render unto Caesar. I don't know if you're alluding to Matthew 22, verse 21, or it's also referenced in the books of
Yes,
Mark and Luke. But what
I
what's
am.
what's your understanding of render unto Caesar in this context?
Well, I gave a talk on that entitled "Rendering on to Caesar When Caesar is the Constitution."
Mm,
If Caesar is the Constitution, we don't have a king. We have a piece of paper, but that piece of paper is something that Americans can swear allegiance to, or they can just simply, as I think 90% of Americans are doing, they don't know what's in it. They don't really care because they're
right.
spoiled, they're soft, and they've got their nice car and their football team's winning. And they don't seem to be concerned. And that can make you depressed. And then I always think back to, hey, when Washington was the Valley Forge and men were with him losing their fingers and their toes due to frostbite,
Yeah.
there were Americans selling wheat to the British who were hunkering down in Philadelphia.
Yes.
There were
I
far too many Americans who were not engaged at all.
yeah.
It was that 10% of people who gave this country what it is. And that's what it always will be. We might as well. That's why I do vote. I believe in voting, but my heart goes out to people who think this is how it's going to change. Well, we're just going to get Trump into office. No, no, it was never they, the elected. It was we, the people.
Right. Right.
And what we need to be able to do is to go into the court and say to the judge, and this is one of the things we're going to be working on yet before this year's out, is we're going to start sending affidavits to judges. And we're going to call them out and say, look, you may not have known it, but we want common law. We don't want statutory jurisdiction. So that's why we're demanding pretrial motions. I was defending myself in a misdemeanor court case. I objected to something that the DA said. The judge said to me, Mr. Beck, explain that. I started and he said, stop. You're bringing up some very viable points. However, that's not why we're here today. You should have brought that up in a pretrial motion. My mentors told me that.
Right.
Don't come into the courtroom, start waving your arms and talking about the Constitution. The Constitution has to be brought up before you're going into the courtroom and saying, listen, I'm coming in under common law jurisdiction. I'm not coming into court on your dime when I have to show up according to your subpoena. No, no, no. I'm demanding common law jurisdiction.
So that has to be established prior to you entering the courtroom. Is that right?
That's the key. That's the key. You don't do it, you're going to get mad, you're going to get frustrated, and you're going to think the government's corrupt. It is corrupt to a certain extent, but it's mostly corrupt because of the ignorance of the people.
Oh yeah, as you mentioned before, there are judges who don't even understand common law,
No,
uh,
and you don't want to
let alone
embarrass a
the rest of
judge.
us.
You don't want to embarrass a judge in front of a room of people.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
pretrial motion, you're just there and you explain to the judge and you say, based upon all this, Your Honor, I move for dismissal. You have no case.
right,
There's no victim. That begins it right there. If there's no victim, there's no crime. Why am I here? Oh, I'm under statutory jurisdiction. That's why I'm here.
right.
I'm not going to be under that anymore. Don't want that anymore.
And there are subtle ways that we um, agree to statute or to maritime law, or the law that the state operates under. Very subtle ways where when we sign our names to documents where the names are in all capitals and some things
Yeah,
like that,
right.
um, that's I guess where the education comes in, so you don't obligate yourself into things that you don't want to.
And that's part of notifying your adversary. If your adversary is a potential judge, and right now they are, then I believe we need to get to the judges and explain to them the position that we're coming from.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
want to blindside anybody.
right. Well, yeah, that's some really good information, and I hope that whets people's appetites to want to learn more. And again, I'll put some links in the show notes at libertynow.com. And Kirk, where can people learn more about what you're doing and find out how you might be able to potentially help them? I'm assuming residents of the US at this point.
I would want them to go to affidavitsecrets.com/liberty. That'll
Okay.
tag them to this program so we know.
Oh,
That's where they'll
excellent.
get the free gift. That's where they'll get additional information about what we're doing.
Awesome. Great, great. Well, I really appreciate that. And I will encourage my listeners to go check that out. And is there anything else that you would like to touch on before we sign off?
No, but I would end by saying this cup is definitely half full.
Okay.
It's not as dire as people make it out to be. I think one of the fruitless things that's going on right now is there's so much information on the airways about how bad things are. But yeah, but if you don't give a solution and you just paint a darker and darker picture, what's going to happen to the people? You're losing them. They're
Right.
giving up. That's
Well
why
said.
I'm doing what I'm doing, because goodness sakes, I have 5 wins,
Right.
and I'm not an astute scholar. I just follow the principles laid out to me by my coaches.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, if just 10% of us would do that, we think we would be, well, we still can. I think we can get to a better place. And I hope folks keep that in mind, especially in the States as we're coming up to the elections. And please do consider the issues when you vote and don't get stuck into identity politics, based on personalities or a whole entire party line. Really do dig down. And like I always say, keep asking questions. Don't ever stop.
Yes,
Be
and
curious.
curiosity might have killed the cat, but curiosity can keep us free.
Amen, brother. Awesome. All right. Well, that's yes, us for now. Until next time, be good, do the right thing, and keep asking questions. Have a
Thank
good
you,
one.
John. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.